Hello and welcome to the City of Wolverhampton, and welcome to this very special event about reimagining our towns and our city centres. My name is Anthony McCourt. I'm from Core Collaboration. We have the privilege and real pleasure of being involved in the Brewer's Yard residential scheme right here in the city centre of Wolverhampton. And actually I want to thank the City of Wolverhampton Council today for allowing us a moment to reflect on what has been and what is a very difficult year for us all, for our citizens of our city, but also for businesses, and particularly for the property and residential sector. But it gives us a moment to reflect and understand how we can come out of this crisis match fit, and how we really can double down on the strengths that Wolverhampton as a city and as a community can bring to bear. So I'll introduce our panel today because we've got the great and the good of this sector with us. We've got Cheryl, Richard and Simon, so I'll ask each of them just to say a few moments about themselves, and then we'll dig into some really interesting questions and topics for discussion this morning.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm Cheryl Blount-Powell, National Property Development Manager for the Canal and River Trust. The Canal and River Trust is a charity that traditionally has a lot of land around its canals. Unfortunately enough, we're in many city centres. We've seen a lot of renaissance over the last few years with our canals and people rediscovering their canals, particularly in these difficult times. So I'm very happy to be here today and hopefully can contribute to this discussion.
Good morning, I'm Richard Lawrence, I'm the Director of Regeneration here at the City of Wolverhampton Council. It's my privilege to lead the team to take forward planning, city development, skills, libraries within the city. But one of our key tasks is to regenerate the city, is to also look at how we can deliver new development across the city boundaries, get new investment in, push the economy and drive Wolverhampton as a key sub-regional centre.
Good morning, I'm Simon Marks from Arcadis and I am the City Executive for the West Midlands. Arcadis is a big company, a global organisation, but actually we're hugely passionate about the region, hugely passionate about the towns and the cities that actually we live, work and hopefully shape and influence.
Great, thank you all. Well, Simon, staying with you, obviously, look, there's no doubt about it, this year has been a very difficult year for businesses and for city centres and towns. And the COVID-19 pandemic has put pressure on plans to really strengthen those areas. But what role does residential development, for instance, play in helping us coming out of this crisis?
I think it's a great question, Anthony, and probably the most hotly debated subject in the real estate profession at the moment, towns and cities, towns, cities and local centres. What is the future? And I think there's a huge amount of debate, a huge amount of hypotheses and ideas at the moment. I don't think anybody's got the answer. I think that's clear. And actually, I think it's probably a little bit too early to have that answer. Because if we reacted to the now, to the moment, what I think we do is probably get it wrong, actually. And the logic and the reason I say that is the journey we've been through lockdown. So when we locked down back in March, I think the first 2 or 3 weeks, the sun was shining, the kids were running around out the front. We'd all switched very quickly to agile working and found it quite easy, actually. And I think we found it different. I think we found it very productive. We didn't have to get on crowded transport to get to work anymore. So I think if you'd have asked people 3 to 4 weeks in, they'd have said, well, we're not going back to the office, sure. We're not going back to the city or the town. And actually, you'd have hung up the big for sale sign across all of our cities and our towns. And I reflect now, in a call I had yesterday, actually, with colleagues and clients, where, especially now their kids have gone back to school, people were saying, I want to get back to the office, I've had enough, I can't cope with home working anymore. So, I think things changing, it's a dynamic environment, so we need to, think carefully about what we do. But to the question, actually, that you asked, is residential a key part of the renaissance? I think it absolutely is. I think it has to be. And I think even without COVID, residential was going to be and will be a key component of our towns and cities. But I think what COVID has given us is an opportunity, actually. Obviously, it's a terrible thing that's happened, but it gives us a great opportunity. And what I mean by that is the pace at which things have happened and will continue to happen means the opportunity for placemaking and fundamentally shifting our towns and cities is there, and we should grab that. I also think it's brought home to lots of people being, sat in your dining room or wherever it is for 6 months actually the home I live in and the place I live in, does it really meet my needs?
Yes.
And I think what people are looking for is quality public realm. I think they're looking for vibrancy. I think they're looking for leisure. I think they're looking for events. I think they're looking for well-managed places. I think they're looking for safe and secure. And therefore, it's those lessons that we should take forward into the new residential, and that's going to be key for our towns and centres going forward.
And Cheryl, would you agree with that this is an opportunity to step back and really think maybe more creatively, more critically about the quality of our housing, about the tenure that's within it, and about the sense of community and place that can be built?
I think you're right. I do agree. I think we've spent a lot of time reflecting on what we want and also what we want outdoors. So our needs and the outdoor needs. I definitely think, and I would agree, that the quality of our home, the flexibility around our houses, whether they're offices, whether they are places to have teaching, schools, etc., but also the great outdoors. And I think we've also learnt about this community spirit, how important the community is to us when we all are in these difficult situations. So, I mean, in my role with the Canal and River Trust, I mean, we obviously have seen some very positive reactions, people using their canals, people getting outside, and we've actually noticed that the canals can play such an important role in people being active. So when we have all been in a very difficult situation, we should look at the outdoors and embrace all this public space and make sure that we can connect to it. So I do agree with Simon, there is a great opportunity now. I think we've always known it, but it's now about putting it in place and actually delivering it and not just talking the talk. We've got to build homes that people want to live in. We've got to build places that people want to live in, and we've got to build that community spirit. So we've been given that, I suppose, challenge in a sense, and we should deliver.
And Richard, obviously our teams have been working hand in glove on Brewers Yard for well over 18 months now and making really good momentum and progress. And the one thing I've always said publicly, working with a lot of local authorities, I'm always amazed by Wolverhampton's solution-oriented, can-do attitude to things, because developments are tough in the city centre. They're complex beasts, but Wolverhampton always comes at things with a creative solution, which is fantastic. But as part of your economic recovery plan for the city, schemes like Brewers Yard and others, where do you see their place now in this new world order?
So I think what Simon and Cheryl said is absolutely fundamental. It's all about placemaking and vibrancy. So we have a great opportunity within the city because we've got some key sites, and what we've been proactively doing as a local authority is land assembling and de-risking those sites so that we can get developers to come forward and invest in the city. Because there's so much going on. I firmly believe there's an awful lot going on in the city. It's got a great location, it's got a fantastic new interchange facility, you've got new office space coming out through I9, so 50,000 square foot of grade A office space coming out of the ground currently. We're investing in our leisure through the civic halls, so £38 million worth of investment going in to make that a global venue. And so we're putting the foundations in place for really creating the vibrancy and footfall that we think the city deserves and does deserve. And looking at the sites that we've got and the sites that we're bringing forward, working with developers such as yourself and with stakeholders such as Cheryl and with Simon, it puts us, I think, in a very, very strong position.
Yes. And actually, speaking of stakeholders, moving on from that, so the local authority, Richard, is pivotal. I mean, developers can't play without the backing of local authorities, and rightly so. There's accountability and policing of quality. And in fact, you know, it's well known in Wolverhampton now, the amount of developer and investor appetite to move into this city is probably at its highest level. And I think that's because Wolverhampton City Council has turned itself into a real facilitator of development. So what role do local authorities, in your view, in the council's view, play in that jigsaw?
So I think you're right. It's about being very proactive and having that can-do approach and understanding that it's got to be a solutions-based system rather than putting obstacles in the way. We know that we have challenges within the city, but we also know we've got some fantastic opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So what can we do as an authority to enable that to happen? So first of all, can we de-risk the site? So land assembly, de-risking, working with stakeholders to bring sites forward. Secondly, to engage with the developer market to say, this is what we can offer. And we've got some fantastic sites in and around the city. And working with organisations such as the Canals and River Trust. We've got one of our sites in and around the canal side, which I would say is probably one of the most strategic sites in the Midlands at this moment in time, a really fantastic opportunity. And I think the other thing for us is about planning, and I think having a really proactive stance to planning. So I'm very fortunate in the city of Wolverhampton. We have probably one of the best performing planning departments in the country, and that's because we have a very solutions-based approach. We know that this is about a can-do attitude and how we can facilitate developers and the right kind of development. We won't say yes to all kinds of development, but we have that solutions approach, and I think that's really important.
And I mean, you guys haven't stood still whatsoever during this pandemic. Can you just explain a bit more about the town deal submission that you and your team have put forward to government?
Yeah, so we've had a busy time putting bids into government. There's two bids that we submitted during the lockdown. One for the Future High Streets Fund, which is looking around public realm and connecting city spaces and linking to the City Centre West, which is another future development opportunity that we have. And the second one, so that's around 29 million pounds worth of investment we're asking for the government to help support us on. The second one is the Towns Fund, and that's a 48 million pound bid that we put into government, really to bring forward some key strategic sites to enable that residential development within the city, but also provide the associated infrastructure to unlock sites and provide that vibrancy and the footfall that we need.
And Cheryl, that jigsaw piece, the Canal and Rivers Trust, not just as a landowner, but as a critical third sector player in this whole jigsaw, can you just explain some of the experiences working with the City of Wolverhampton Council, but more generally on what type of role that has to play?
I think local authorities have a very key role right now in terms of leading the recovery. And I think that's been demonstrated, again, with the Canal Side South scheme that we've been fortunate to be involved with. The very strong partnership, the collaboration is critical, to pool resources, to pool skills, and to build on the assets that we've all got. So I think that is it, the key leadership role that local authorities can have now. I also think local authorities have a role in terms of the site assembly, again, having control of land. And I think Wolverhampton have clearly demonstrated that by taking ownership, by taking control, and then making things happen. For so many years, we always say, oh, if only that happens. The only way these things can happen if we can take control.
Totally.
So I do believe, my response to that really is about strong leadership, local authorities leading by master planning, good design, and sort of the collaboration and partnership approach. And for us, we're very fortunate in Wolverhampton to have a canal right in the city centre that we can use to connect people, to connect businesses, to connect households. And we should use it. We are seeing people rediscover their canals right now. So we need to build on that experience, and we've got a great opportunity to do that.
I mean, that connectivity piece is key, isn't it? And actually, we can vouch, having working with the planning team at Wolverhampton Council, they make us think so critically and make us much more focused, actually, as a result of what type of community we're creating here. And they challenge us in a really good way on quality. On not just the internal space of the apartments and homes we intend to build, but actually the public realm, the sense of community, the amount of external space, and that element of safety and nighttime economy feel. And we think Brewers Yard is becoming something much more special as to when we started it. And that is actually as a result of the planning challenge we've had back from your officers. So that mutual win-win approach, Simon, it really does work. You work with authorities all across the country, and actually Arcadis do with all municipal governments around the world. What role do those forward-thinking government authorities play in unlocking these complex jigsaws?
Well, I think they have a number of roles to play, Anthony. Probably for me, and again, it's building on what colleagues have already said actually this morning, but it's like any market, isn't it? Whether it be the investment or the stock market, it's about confidence actually, and that's what those authorities can play. They give confidence, be it through land assembly, be it through the planning process, be it through the de-risking. but giving confidence to the market that they know they're going to invest in something, they're going to develop in a place where they can see long-term value being created, they can see returns being delivered. But I think also for me, and I think COVID has taught us something else that's really, really important, and that is about the value that we perhaps historically haven't placed, but need to place on things like health and well-being, mental health, physical health and well-being. And to your point about creating great places and planning departments actually holding the line on making sure we're delivering, genuinely transformational place-making opportunities, the benefits that will deliver back to citizens, back to the UK PLC, just in terms of, actually greater employment opportunities, reduced burdens on the health sector, all those sorts of things. Place has a key role, and the authorities as enablers in giving that confidence, absolutely critical.
Yeah. And staying on planning departments and planning law for a moment. So, as with all areas of the country, we're seeing a rise in permitted development schemes, and it's a really hot topic within the development community at the moment. There's some real protagonists for it, and people who really are finding it's a regressive approach inside. So, Richard, what's your view on what role permitted development has to play within this wider piece?
So I think there is a role for permitted development, and our approach is very much around the quality aspects. There's a role for permitted development, and there's the need for us to have a mixed tenure in the residential market. So having that flexible and having that mix of tenure, I think, is important. However, quality is absolutely key, which is why it does need to be policed correctly. And also, we mustn't lose sight that in order to get a balanced economy, we also need to invest in our employment space. So we don't want to be losing offices to residential if we know that we've got a growing office market and demand for such a type of use. So I think for us, we've got to grow our economy in a balanced way. The city centre is vital for that. I've alluded to already the fact that we have new Grade A office space coming out of the ground as we speak. So we know there is a demand for office space. So we've got to get that balance absolutely right between residential focus, office focus, other uses within the city centre to ensure that vibrancy, linking into a range of different uses with key stakeholders. So the university plays a key role within that, and student accommodation within the city. Yeah. The hospital and the Royal Wolverhampton Trust, again, key workers, all need to be considered within our new housing requirement and our sites within the city going forward.
Yeah. And staying on that role of what role does housing play in people's lives, Cheryl? I'm moving back to that water piece for a moment. There's a ton of research out there that water is good for mental health, and actually it's good for general well-being and living. And obviously you're the best person to talk about this, from the Canal and River Trust. Can you just give us some insight as to how developers like myself and others can really dig a bit deeper in terms of the type of designs we're bringing forward to make sure that we're building communities that are sustainable and affordable, but also have a sense of well-being for the people that live in them?
Absolutely. No, I think it's a really good point. The Canal and River Trust, as you've mentioned, we are a charity. We're not just a waterway, but we also are a well-being charity. There is studies out there that demonstrate just by 1 hour, by being by water by 1 hour, improves your happiness. Sure. So the longer you can spend by water, obviously your happiness will improve. Black country, 70% of the population live within 1 kilometre of a canal, so that's positive. So we've already got the makeup, we've got the basic ingredients. We are seeing people using the canals more for walking, for cycling, to just accessing. We can use them to just get to work. So what we try and do, and the work that I do, we're very much working in partnership, is to encourage developers to work with us. We've got JVs, we work with local authorities, etc., to encourage the connectivity to development, to open up to the canals, to connect to the canals. Don't close your backs to the canals. We've got some horrible examples across the country where developments have occurred and they've basically put up fences to the canal, probably because of concerns around antisocial behaviour. And what we're trying to actively do is to encourage development to embrace the canals, to be part of it. So we can knock those barriers down, make sure they are safe places to walk and to be to cycle, but also get the animation on the canals as well. We've seen a lot of people go back into kayaking, paddleboarding, fishing has become very popular again now, getting young people down by the water space. We've seen nature emerge, we've seen cleaner canals recently because of the lack of pollution. So it is about that, getting people to live in places that they can actually enjoy the outdoors. So certainly, Anthony, very happy to be working with you, encouraging that open design, that embracing it, getting that public realm in there, and creating great places, as we've said before, great places that people want to live in. They're not just houses, they are actually homes, and they have that space. We've got some good examples of some really good schemes coming out the ground. In Birmingham, we've got a scheme we're working with Urban Splash and Places for People. Port Loop, where we've seen, again, over the lockdown period, where people have actually been embracing the water, becoming a community, living in homes that they can actually become a community and get down and get some fresh air and some walking in as well. So it is really important, I think.
And so I'm moving on from that. So using the crown jewels, the canvas as best we can moving forward. There's so much good stuff going on inside Wolverhampton at the moment. And actually, we all know it has a lack of city centre housing. But actually, I see that as its opportunity. But it's opportunity not just to follow suit as what other regional centres have done, to think more critically and do something really special and bring some real magic dust as to how to answer some of these big challenges in terms of housing. So how do we start with that differentiated offer? What should we be thinking about?
I think you said canvas, the blank canvas that Wolverhampton has, which is just such a great opportunity. So how do we do that? I think we do all the things that are happening at the moment, which is a good start, isn't it? Actually, we're assembling land, we're de-risking, we're thinking about what COVID has taught us. I keep talking about COVID, but it's taught us so much. Building, Cheryl, on what you've just said about the health and well-being and the quality of place, and we learn all those lessons and we use our blank canvas to paint that picture. Now, I think if you look at Wolverhampton, you've got some trump cards. I really do. I think you've got the canal. I think you've got the heritage. I think you've got the civic halls. We've talked a lot about those sorts of things. But the other bit is your connectivity. So Wolverhampton's connectivity means, and 15 minutes from Birmingham, so you've got Birmingham City, Wolverhampton City, 15 minutes apart. So you can live in this fantastic place, built to reflect all the lessons we've learned. So it's a different offer, right? And you're 15 minutes from Birmingham, which means you get 2 for the price of 3/4. And I say that because actually you get everything Wolverhampton has to offer, everything Birmingham has to offer at about 3/4 of the price. What's not to like with that offer? So I think it's things like that, Anthony, that will really, really drive and create that market for Wolverhampton. And I've got one more thing I have to say.
Sure.
And given the audience, I know I have to say this. It doesn't matter the colour of the scarf that you wave on a Saturday. Doesn't matter. But actually, having a Premier League football club in your city centre with all the footfall, the profile, everything it creates, what a fantastic opportunity. We delivered the ground, Tottenham, the Spurs ground, and the impact that has been massive. So let's not underestimate it. I know we're looking at it, but what a great opportunity.
Yeah. And with that opportunity comes a real responsibility, doesn't it? Look, we understand our responsibility to get Brewers Yard right. That is a massive opportunity for the citizens of this city, and we want people in Wolverhampton to live here who actually live and work in this city, because that's the whole point of what we're trying to do. And with that comes a real custodian responsibility to get it right. We're next door to the University of Wolverhampton's new campus of the school environment and the built environment, which is a transformational piece of architecture in and of itself, an amazing baseline in which we've got to work from. And your planners, Richard, are doing a great job, but even challenge us even now to go one step further and deliver truly transformational housing. So we're excited about it because we have a local authority that's up for the opportunity. But that responsibility, the development community listening and watching today, can you just talk to them a bit about when you come and invest in this city, just the opportunity and the responsibility that comes with that?
So, yeah, I think that it's always a two-way thing, isn't it? And for me, it's very much about a team and creating a team. This isn't about the council wanting one thing, a developer wanting another, and doing it in a very transactional way. This is about investing in the city and subscribing to our beliefs and what it is that we're wanting to have for the city going forward, which is why we work in collaboration with a number of stakeholders. We know we can't do it all on our own. Yeah. So we've got a new collaboration agreement with the Canals and River Trust. So we're working closely with them as a key stakeholder to deliver the massive site and the massive opportunity around Canal side. And there's going to be some further announcements later this week about Canal side. So very, very important, very, very exciting. But it's about also understanding, as Simon alluded to, you know, the uniqueness, the unique selling points of Wolverhampton. And there's an edginess to this city. Yes. It's a young city. It's a very dynamic city. It's a very vibrant city. And we've got to build on that. You know, this isn't about pastiche development. This is about really homing in on the uniqueness of the city and what it's got going for it. So, as Simon says, you know, we've got some great sites. We've got some great opportunities. We're really looking at building that local economy piece, and that's what we're wanting from developers. And you said right at the very outset, Anthony, that we've seen a surge in interest from developers and investors since lockdown, which has been absolutely fantastic. Our role really is to balance that and make sure we've got a real sustainable approach to the future development of Wolverhampton and to deliver. And it is absolutely critical that we do deliver. We've been talking now for some time about the sites coming forward and the opportunity. We've now got to get it on the ground. Yeah. And that's where, again, our role as a local authority can assist to facilitate that development and get that investment in the city.
And Cheryl, to the developers watching and the investors looking to come into places like Wolverhampton, what would you say, what would your call to arms be to them in terms of how to think a bit differently or maybe approach a design or a development, especially with water involved, maybe more creatively and collaboratively? Have you any advice to reach out?
Well, certainly where water's involved, we always encourage every developer to come and talk to us and to engage with us. To sort of talk about what some of the key design principles would be. And we're very open about that. We've got a great team internally who are very passionate, enthusiastic about the waterways. You know, we all are. We're all very passionate. We want to see these places thrive. So very actively encourage anybody to come and talk to us at any stage. And I think the important thing with Wolverhampton has been this collaboration approach and the fact that, you know, we're not on deaf ears. There is, you know, people are listening to how important the water, the role the water can play in people's lives. Yeah. You know, we've spoken about COVID. We realise outdoor space is important. We've got this asset. Let's use it. Let's embrace it, and I think it's, if anybody's looking, it's about the confidence we've mentioned there. You know, confidence to come and invest in Wolverhampton. I think the team has grown. I think the confidence in Wolverhampton as a place as well. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there, and we know that, and we appreciate everybody's after the same sort of schemes. But I think Simon's point there, you know, you're minutes away from Birmingham, you've got a great motorway, you've got so many assets in Wolverhampton, theatre, clubs, everything, a young population. It's got a lot going for it. So look at those, and I think one of the most fantastic things that I've seen is the investment in the railway station. Agreed. I think that's been a very positive thing. I think that's a very good thing for Wolverhampton. It's put itself on the map. Investing in infrastructure like that is key, and then everything else will come out of it. The impact of that will be enormous. So actively come and talk to us at the Canal and River Trust if any developments around water. Yeah. If you want to come and talk to us about Canal side, absolutely, we'd be delighted. The time is now right. We're getting that assembly going, and it's about investing in Wolverhampton. Yeah.
And Simon, Arcadis have done some great stuff on what makes a truly global city. And actually, transport infrastructure is key to that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. The ability to move people, goods and services around, actually, is critical. I don't think we underestimate it, and I think we're in a period at the moment where perhaps we're not moving around quite so much. But as we were talking about earlier, that desire to get back to have human-to-human interaction, be it business meetings, be it sales meetings, be it actually collected around a good old-fashioned drawing to design the sorts of places that we've just been talking about. Sure. So I think that connectivity, and I include digital in that as well, Anthony, which of course 5G is something Wolverhampton is leading on again. And when I reflect on some of the things that we've talked about this morning, you get to a point to sort of the developer and investor community where you say, well, why wouldn't you come to Wolverhampton? It's got absolutely every box ticked. It's got everything you need. So, you know, why wouldn't you come?
Sure.
And I think that investment in the railway station, I think that motorway network, I think that the tram, that the connectivity, I don't know if I can think of anywhere that's got quite so much as Wolverhampton.
Yeah. And actually, you know, we could step back a moment and think about what are cities generally. And actually, I didn't pay much attention to Shakespeare in Northern Ireland when I was growing up. But one of the best quotations and definitions of a city has actually come from one of his plays, which is, what is a city but for its people? And actually, if you step back and think, we're not in the bricks and mortar business here, we're in the people business. And when you build communities and homes for people to spend incredible personal, intimate moments with families, with loved ones, then this becomes a very personal business, and therefore the responsibility is there to get it right. But equally, Richard, what I love about Wolverhampton City Council is that you're not centrically focused on the city centre. Wolverhampton is much more than its city core. And if you look at things like Bilstein Urban Village, I mean, what a massive value proposition that's brought to that part of town. Can you just explain the rationale and how pleased you are with that?
Yeah, no. So you're absolutely right. It's not just about the city centre. There's a number of local centres as well. Bilstein, Wednesfield, Tettenhall, to name a few. But Bilstein is the second largest outside of the city centre. And you're right, the Bilstein Urban Village project now has been going for some considerable time, but we are now reaping the benefits of that, led by Homes England initially. It has seen a rise in new residential opportunities and growth, and we're actually seeing house prices now topping out at around 350,000, which is unprecedented actually for that part of the city. And not only that, the interest and the take up in the housing there has been a real surprise to us all, and a lot of it has been about young people from the area getting there on the ladder for the first time. So again, going back to that people, the connectivity to place, is a real, it's a real strong driver for the demand in the housing down in Bilstein. So Bilstein's been brilliant, and we're really, really pleased with how that's panning out. There's subsequent phases to that as well, and of course the other thing, just importantly about Bilstein, is it sits on the metro line as well. So you go straight into the city of Wolverhampton. Equally, you're straight into Birmingham city centre. You're straight into Snow Hill, and in a few years' time, you're going to be straight into Birmingham, straight over to Curzon Street and down to London if that's what you want to do. So actually, although people don't realise it, Bilstein is a really, really well-connected place, and I think that will pay dividends in the future. Totally. Allied that to the employment sites that are adjacent to the residential sites that's in our ownership and that we're taking forward. Again, getting a lot of interest from developers and investors for the employment market in Bilstein. So again, a real success story in the making, a very vibrant place, and really looking forward to seeing how that pans out.
And Cheryl, Bilstein Urban Village is a great example of how we all have a responsibility, not just the City of Wolverhampton Council, to deliver choice to our customers, a choice of where you want to live, whether it is the city core or it's the suburbs. And just driving that choice works for everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an important point that was made before as well. I think Bilstein is a great example of quality public realm. And also the engagement, the multi-agency public sector approach, the engagement with the locals, the engagement with the councillors. And it's picking up a point, Anthony, you said, at the end of the day, it's where communities want to live. Yeah. So create places that people can influence and have some say on. And I think it is a great example. There's a lot of things that are very positive, and we need to build on that positivity, take them away. So, you know, congratulations to to that scheme. It has proved a success, and that's good. You know, we can all use and refer to that now.
And Simon, towns are as critical as cities in shaping an economic recovery, and actually the Towns Fund application actually drove that, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And having been involved and worked with Richard and colleagues around that fund, just looking at Bilstein and the opportunity, the sort of markets, Well, I mean, towns have I think a great offer within an ecosystem of a place, and I think that's the important things that something and a place like Wolverhampton will be an ecosystem of places. So you will have apartments and townhouses in the city centre. You've got the university, you've got your student accommodation, you've got all of that connectivity. You've got the likes of Bilstein where you'll have more family housing. So actually people don't need to leave Wolverhampton as they move through their life and opportunities and things change. That connectivity sort of building on that. You've got the employment land as well, and we know huge demand for that. So, I mean, I did some work not that long ago on ecosystems around actually towns and local centres and relationships with cities. And it is this just symbiotic relationship between people, economy and place. And I think that's what Wolverhampton has. And this blank canvas within its grasp to, really, really be absolutely up there, a global place, a global city, a global place.
Yeah. Richard, any thoughts on that?
Absolutely agree, and you're right that the Towns Fund does provide us an opportunity to put further investment not just in the city centre but also places like Bilstein and Wednesfield, because they are key. They're key to the vibrancy of the city, the ecosystem as a whole, not just of the city of Wolverhampton but the wider Black Country, West Midlands region. So we know that we still have a lot to do. I think that from our side we've got the collaboration in place with key stakeholders, and we're happy to work with people to enable us to deliver the aspirations that we have for our city, because we know it's a great city and we want to make it great.
Yeah. And actually it rings so true. Moving on to that piece, actually about a general call to arms. So for developers and investors and small businesses watching today who want to invest in this city and take some risk, but actually, and I'm not playing my violin on behalf of the development community, but this stuff's tough, and actually it's got a bit tougher this week. But that won't stop us, but it just means that we need stakeholders who truly understand how difficult it is to get this stuff over the finish line. And developers don't often have the best press in this country, but actually some of us take some real risk and deliver some meaningful, truly, generational changing schemes. And what would your call to arms be in terms of the global investors that will be watching this, Richard? So you know that we've been talking with some American, pan-European and Asian investment looking to come into Brewer's Yard. They're incredibly excited as to the opportunity and the value proposition that brings, because they'll be one of the first. And they can really set the benchmark for quality and for density home living here in the city centre. But what is Wolverhampton's message today to the global investment space coming out of COVID-19?
So I think that it's very much around the opportunity to invest in a growing, vibrant city that has a real edge to it, that has some sites which are of such strategic value and importance. You just don't get them elsewhere in the country at this moment in time. And as we've alluded to, we're talking about canal side sites, we're talking about city centre sites, we're talking about edge of city sites, we're talking of sites of scale. And I think that's really important, that these are large strategic sites, and we have an opportunity to come and invest and build this city and to make this city great again. And it's also looking at who else is in the city. So Fosun, for example, Chinese owned, they're with the football club, they've invested heavily in the football club. There's a key strategic relationship there. They took a risk, is paying dividends. At the moment, I hope we'll have a great season. They've had success on success, season by season. So that's a good example of a global investor within the city. But there are others. We've got some key sectors within the city. Jaguar Land Rover, for example, Moog. There's a big thing about the aerospace as well as the automotive industry. So we've got some very high-end businesses, a lot of them located on our award-winning I-54 site up there by the motorway. So there are investors there. We have a global market. I'd say to international investors, you're not coming in on your own, and we will work with you to create that relationship and to anchor you within the city and to work with you going forward.
Because Simon, Wolverhampton has been fantastic at this FDI story, this foreign direct investment. As Richard said, Fosun in particular, a massive Chinese company coming in and spending real cash and and getting behind Wolverhampton and its citizens. Arcadis works with some of the biggest wall of cash around the world, continually investing in regional city centres. What would you say is to try and reduce that delta between the investment prospectus coming out of COVID and matching that to the capital around the world?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, Anthony. I mean, there is a huge amount of money out there, and it is looking for a home. And I think it goes back to perhaps an earlier answer around that confidence and being able to see long-term value creation. Because it's very easy for money to put, and deliver sort of, I don't know, market or thereabouts returns. But actually, the money that we're talking about is looking for higher than average returns. And therefore, you need to invest in the right time, in the right place, just as it's starting to hit its sort of growth curve. And I think that's where Wolverhampton, again, has that unique opportunity. Richard, what you've just described in terms of the businesses already invested in here and the job creation and actually high value activity that's taking place, for me is a beacon out there to international investors. You've got a very resilient city. You've got a sustainable city. We talked about the transport earlier. These are all the things that the international market are looking for. And actually, you've got pretty much every single box ticked. So, Anthony, I think that delta, I think that delta's reduced.
Sure.
I think what we're going to see over the next 12 months is some pretty exciting activity, actually. I really, really do.
And Cheryl, last comment from you today. So in terms of that resilient city piece that Richard talked about, that global investor base that's already here with a lot more to follow, and a city that's open for business, as Richard described, you put all that together, it's a pretty formidable proposition, isn't it?
It is. It's very, as Simon said, it's quite exciting, really, and we hope it all comes to fruition. And I suppose, finishing off really from my side, I think it is that strong partnership, the strong working together. It's that leadership. It's the quality. There isn't an excuse for poor quality housing anymore. That's a given. It should happen. But I think it's the placemaking. We've spoken very much about the placemaking and adding that value. And we have seen that water does add value. We've seen that in people who like to live by water. But more importantly, what we're also seeing is water does transform places. It does enrich lives. So if we've got that added asset, let's embrace it. Let's bring it into the equation. Let's not turn our backs onto our waterways. Let's include them into this renaissance, this revival, reimagining our cities. Bring them back in, like the Industrial Revolution. We should make them lively places where people want to spend time. And we know, the studies show that, again, the waterways play a very active role in keeping people healthy and active. So if we're going to be spending more times in our homes, working and living, maybe this is for the next year or so, on and off, we want to have great places. So I think my ending comment is around using this opportunity to create great places, working collaboratively and making them happen, delivering on the promise, the vision, the ambition, having that there, and not cutting back on things that we traditionally cut back on. When costs go high, everybody cuts back on the things like public space and say, well, we'll just make that less important, or the quality depreciates. I think we've got to make sure we do invest in our outdoor space just as much as the indoor space. Yeah. So thank you, yeah.
Great stuff. Well, look, thank you for your time today. So we've heard about resilient cities, about great investment cases, and about a global investor base that already is here with more to follow. So when I would say, personally, having dealt with Wolverhampton City Council over the last 2 years on what is probably going to be one of the biggest city centre residential schemes to come forward in this city in the next 10 years, I've been amazed at how open for business it has been, but actually about how collaboratively the planners and development team are really pushing us to make that scheme something more than it can and should be today. And as a result of which, the result of that, I think, is going to be truly transformational for the Midlands, but primarily, and rightly so, for the citizens of this great city. So thank you for your time today.